Hi, this is Mad Cat, the egalitarian that discusses this and that. Today is a great show. We will be discussing the brain of a social justice warrior. As always, if I mispronounce your name, I apologize ahead of time. That's what I was trying to do last time. It helps if you actually write things down, try to do things off the top of your head. Um, so I'm trying out some new settings with my microphone. It's still kind of a work in progress. Hopefully this won't be like crazy loud. I basically did a microphone boost. Hopefully this comes out just fine, but I'm showing full green bars all the time now. Whereas before I might get 3 if I held it inside my mouth. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting episode today because I'm going to be talking about a friend of mine. Now, this is a very dear friend of mine, someone I care deeply, deeply about. However, she considers herself to be a social justice warrior. She's a feminist, of course. Her take on a lot of things is that there's a lot of sexism out there, there's a lot of racism, a lot of homophobia, queer hating, things like that. We've actually had to come to a point where we had to make an agreement not to talk about certain issues because it always led into arguments with us. But, I tried to share videos with her and talk to her about various things. And while we're not directly discussing, some of these issues, I do get to see her mind in action. So I wanted to go ahead and share a couple of these. Now, I'm not going to be releasing any information about who this person is because, like I said, she is a very dear and close person to me. So I don't want anyone to find out who she is and try to harass her or anything because I just don't want to see that happen to her. But I am going to share a couple of things. Now, the first one that I'm sharing today, it was a rather interesting conversation. Now, the long short of it is I'm doing NaNoWriMo and I'm part of a group that is predominantly girls. I really hate the group because everyone really seems to be immature, and I don't think it's because that they're girls, because the majority of the writing community is female. I think it's because they don't really take this seriously like I do. And so we're often on opposite ends on a lot of things. And I mostly just kind of keep out of stuff. I'm pretty much only staying for Nano itself. So basically, my friend was talking to the leader of the group. And she was like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and add each other's profiles to each other. And my friend looks at the picture of her, and her picture, this leader of the group, her profile picture, she basically is showing her breasts. They're covered up, it's tactful, but her breasts are really big, and you can see her waist, and it's pretty small. So I'm going to read to you a little bit of what she said. She's like, do you have a pair of chicken cutlets down your shirt in your ID selfie? Or just a lot of necklaces making it look that way? I don't know what she meant by necklaces. And then 30 seconds later, she's like, just realize how offensive that sounded. I apologize. I'm not accusing you or anything. I honestly just don't understand your picture. I should shut up. Yeah, pretty much. So she messaged me a few minutes later, and she's like, I think I insulted her. So I told her, message her directly and let her know that you didn't mean anything by it, what have you. And she did already, and she's like, I'm just waiting for a response back. And then she starts in, it's like, although, to be honest, with that waist to boob ratio, how was I not to assume they were fake? And it's just like that statement right there. How was she not to assume they were fake? Even if they were, it's not her place to ask anything. So I said, what would you say to me if I had accused a girl of having fake tits just by the look of it? And she's like, you have a point. And I'm like, would you tell me that I was being sexist even if I wasn't intending on it? And she's like, thank you for pointing out my misogyny. I shall work on fixing it. Now, honestly, I don't see what she did as misogyny. Not in the slightest. So I tell her, it's not misogyny. That's a scapegoat, because I think misogyny is used anytime someone wants to say, oh, you insulted this woman, that's misogyny. Oh, you don't support what this woman is saying, that's misogyny. Oh, you looked at this girl for a split second too long, that's misogyny. Oh, you're a man, you're a misogynist. The word is thrown around way too much to excuse a lot of behavior. It's basically saying my bad. It's like someone says, hey, you just stepped on my foot, and they're like, my bad. It's just an unapologetic way of doing it, except in this case, it's kind of guilt-ridden to say, oh, you're a misogynist, meaning you need to feel guilty for what you did. In this case, she did do something bad, and she should feel bad, but misogyny is not the word for it. So I go on. Misogyny is the hating of women. You didn't hate her, nor did you hate that her breasts were fake. You were simply stating something out of turn. If you saw a picture of my penis and asked if I photoshopped it to make it look bigger, and I told you that it's my actual size, would that be misandry? And did you hate me because I was a male when you asked your question? And she said no. And it's like, I thought, okay, maybe she finally understood my point, that because she didn't have the intention of showing her hate, it's not misogyny. And I said, you insulted her, not out of hate, but out of ignorance. Ignorance does not equal hate. Misogyny is a word that is thrown around way too easily and should only be used for something truly bad, not just for when a female has hurt feelings. You are not a misogynist, nor what you did was misogynistic. Then she says, passing unwanted judgment on a woman's body is a misogynistic thing to do. And that's what I did when I said with that waist to boob ratio. It was internalized misogyny and not the entire thought process. And that's not my entire thought process personality, but was no less hateful. To go up to a woman and say, are your tits fake, is not hateful. It's not a question you should ask, but it's not a product of hating the person. Now, it might be a product of you being jealous that they have bigger tits than you, and you're like, hey, are those fake? Or maybe you want to get a boob job and you're wanting to know where they went to go to get their boob job. Again, not a question you should really be asking, but it's not one out of hate. Now, hers was a little bit on the joking side. She thought they were fake, so she's like, did you stuff chicken breasts down your shirt? And, back in my day, girls stuffed socks in their bra, or rolled up paper or toilet paper or paper towels into the bra to make their bra look bigger. Chicken breast is a new one on me and would probably be one of the most unsanitary things I've ever heard of. Plus the fact it would make her clothes smell like chicken, but okay. I guess the world is starting to get into we won't eat chicken, but we'll put it down our shirt. So in this instance, she had to be guilty of something. She made a woman feel bad, and her mind immediately went towards she did something wrong, and it has to be misogyny because it involved a girl being hurt. There's no other explanation for it. And even when I tried to demonstrate to her that because her intention was not hate, because hate is very much an intentional thing. I think the only way something can be internalized is if it was passive aggressive. Like if she went up to her and said, "Oh, did you stuff chicken breasts down your bra? I mean, are you trying to get attention?" That's a passive aggressive response, which then I could say, okay, maybe that's internalized misogyny, but I would say that's just passive aggressive misogyny. But the idea that you're saying something that insults someone else that you didn't intend to be insulting is not in itself hateful. It's ignorance, it's stupidity, it's rudeness, but it's not hate. Hate is a very strong word, like misogyny, that shouldn't be thrown around. So let me go ahead and go into some other examples I saw of her doing things. We've been watching Red versus Blue. I've been wanting to show her this entire series. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big, big, big Red versus Blue fan. And I've watched all the seasons up to season 11. When I got her to start watching the seasons, I decided to hold off on watching season 12 until we both saw it together. So I've shown her the first 5 seasons so far, and so far she's really liked it, and her favorite character obviously is Tex, because she's a strong female and everyone is afraid of her. Well, in season 5, they introduce a new character, which is Sister. Sister is a ditz. She's not very smart. She is overly sexual to the point of being a slut. And she's basically a party girl. She hated her. She's like, I don't like how they wrote her character. And I'm like, well, why? It's like, they just make her out to sound really bad. I'm like, look at all of the other characters. All the other characters are idiots. Tex even has her idiotic moments sometimes. And yet when we introduce a girl, because, Tex is a very strong character in of herself. And the fact she's female makes her even more likable by my friend. But you bring in a girl who is just about on level with all the other characters, this is a bad thing. Because it's insulting to women. And, like I explained to her, well, all the other characters are idiots. They all represent a negative aspect of humanity. Caboose is dumb as a doorbell. Tucker is a sleazy, womanizing flirt who's just always trying to get laid. Hell, I mean, Tex always keeps hitting him, and he still would sleep with Tex if she said, hey, let's go have sex. Church has anger issues. Donut he misses the point a lot. He's very, I forget the word, but he's clueless most of the time. He's not stupid. He just kind of doesn't see the bigger picture. Simmons is a kiss ass. Griff is lazy, and Sarge has a superiority complex. And then I forgot what I said about Doc. Mostly that he's incompetent. He's not really that good of a doctor. So, I mean, we have all of these negative characteristics, and then we bring in a character who's ditzy, and slutty, and this is a bad thing. And, you know, I've kind of compared it, if you took Tucker and Caboose and combined them together, you would get Sister. And in fact, Sister actually balances out the Blues, because she gets along with Caboose because they both have about the same intelligence. They get along with Tucker because they both really love sex. She annoys Church, but then so does everyone. And Tex has a little bit of rapport with her because it's another female. And in fact, you know, it would have been sexist if they made another strong female character. But there's another way to look at this. Consider the fact that Donut is flamboyant. You know, there's a lot of suggestion that he's actually gay, and he makes a lot of gay references, but they make fun of him all the time for it. She didn't say anything about that. How about the things that they said about Tex? That, you know, she would cheat on Church a lot, and that she was physically abusive. Not a problem whatsoever. It's the fact that they show negative qualities of a female, she starts to have a problem. And what I see in her mind working is that she immediately sees a problem and attaches onto it. And I don't even think she's consciously aware that she's doing that. There was another instance that I showed her a video, and this was an SNL video back from the 70s. So we're talking like 60s, 70s, I forget which. But it was like Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi. It wasn't Jim Belushi, so John Belushi. And it was the superhero party. So it's like Bill Murray is playing Superman, and then the Flash comes, and then the Incredible Hulk comes. And it's like, there's no way this party could actually be happening, but it is, so it's pretty funny. Well, they invite, like, so suddenly we see like the Thing, and we see Spider-Man and Invisible Girl. We see a lot of these characters, and then the last person to come in is Ant-Man. Ant-Man is played by an African-American actor. I don't remember his name, and I don't know if he was the only cast member, but considering the time frame, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So they start making fun of him in this because of his powers. And Ant-Man, my friend, I showed this video to her because I thought it was very funny. And she's like, well, this is racist. And I'm like, well, what do you mean it's racist? And she's like, well, they're making fun of him. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, he's black. So that's racist that they're making fun of him. I'm like, they're not making fun of the actor. They're making fun of the character. And she's like, well, yeah, but why couldn't they get a white person to play that? Why did they have to get a black person? I'm like, I don't even think they really thought that way. I mean, someone correct me if they did. I'll, apologize. But, they may have done it because of his comedy stylings, maybe the way Dan Aykroyd and this actor interacted with each other. Maybe they just drew parts at random. Who knows? But to immediately assume that it's a racial intent, that they made this actor play this part just so they could make fun of him. And yes, I understand it's the 70s and it was different back then on a lot of things, but I don't see racism when I watch this. I am looking at this from 2014, so maybe my view is skewed of it, and I don't know what the mentality was back then, but I don't see racism. And she's younger than me, and she does. The last point I bring up before I kind of talk a little bit more about analyzing all of this is I have a story that I'm writing right now, and I hope to release it next year. In the story, there is because this actually takes place in the 1300s. And I didn't have a whole lot of information about how women were treated back then. Because I hear a lot of resources saying that women were treated unfairly. They were more or less property to be bartered with to try to get money or social standing or what have you because of arranged marriages. And I wanted strong female characters within my story, but I also had to respect the time frame. So if I was going to break this taboo back then, I had to find a way to do it that also respected history. Because I could start making things up, but then it kind of takes away from how real the story will feel. And then I saw a documentary. I believe his name is Terry Jones. He was on Monty Python. Started talking about the Middle Ages and talked about how this concept of how women were treated was originated in the 19th century during the Victorian era to try to control women. And that back then it was very different. It was not like basically our world believes. It was completely different, that women were expected to be able to do the job of a man. And that they, especially in the latter half of the 1300s, they started to get a lot more notoriety, a lot more social status individually, because there were less men, and that they had to do work in order to get food, because half of Europe basically died because of the bubonic plague. So it wasn't really like, oh, well, we don't want women doing anything. It was, we really need women doing stuff, or else a lot of people will starve. So, in fact, women had a lot of agency, a lot more than they have now. I mean, there really wasn't groups out there trying to say that women are being treated unfairly, when in fact it's quite the opposite. Back then, it's like, you got two hands, you can go work. I don't care what's between your legs. Go out there and, shovel up crap, or, pick up a hoe and start chopping down grass or what have you. Can you hold a knife? Okay, you're now a butcher, I mean, they had a lot of other problems back then, but gender equality wasn't one of them. So I start talking to my friend. I'm telling her about some of this stuff, and I'm like, I was a little worried about how I was going to try to integrate a strong female character within my story before I found all of this out. And she goes off on a rant, telling me how dare I say that women were not strong throughout history, and that there has been a lot of evidence that women were as capable as men throughout entire history. And she goes on for about 5 minutes. I'm like, how about you let me get to the point that I was trying to make before you interrupt me? And she's like, I'm sorry, I should have done that. And I'm like, I was actually angry with her, because it's like, how can you still think that I'm sexist after everything we've discussed? Because she's what I call an egalitarian feminist. She's also a passive feminist. Passive feminists are those that'll tell you to look up the dictionary definition, but deny that all of the bad feminists are not actually feminists. They're like, well, those are not real feminists. Not all feminists. Those are the passive feminists. And she's very much like that. But she's also really believes in equality for men and women, and I've really kind of molded her in that. I'm not trying to change her. I'm just trying to present her with facts. Anyways, where was I? So anyways, sorry, I'm starting to lose my train of thought. So she was giving me a lecture about how sexist I was being, because I thought that women were not strong throughout history. And I'm like, I know women were strong throughout history. I just didn't have all the information, and I'm constantly doing research. And I probably spend more time doing research than I do any other activity, except for Tumblr. I spend a lot of time on Tumblr, but Tumblr, research, writing, eating, and then sleeping. And that's the order in which I do things. So, not the order, but most of the amount of time I'm spending. So, I get at her and I'm like, how dare you, make this accusation about me? Because I've always tried to show her that I don't think like that I think that women are fully capable of doing things that men are, except in the cases where sexual dimorphism comes in. But women are still capable of doing that. They just have to work harder to obtain the same level as men that comes easy for men, and vice versa. There are things that women can do that men have to work really hard to be able to do it. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. It's just when you said, this and this, it just got me going. And seeing this and seeing all of this, what I realized is that this is an emotional trigger. The scientific term is what we call an amygdala hijack. Now, the amygdala is a portion of the brain. It's a very small thing. But anytime we receive any sort of stimulation, whether it's a touch or a taste or a smell, or we hear something, it goes into our brain, and before it goes into the part of our brain that analyzes what it's doing, it goes through the amygdala. And the amygdala says, okay, we have this thing here, and it's basically tied to emotions and memory. So it says, okay, do we have a memory of this? Oh, yes, we do. Well, we know that this associates with this emotion, so let's go ahead and hijack the entire brain and express this emotion. And this happens about a millisecond before it hits the part of your brain that analyzes it. A good example of this is, have you ever heard a joke that was just so funny and that you laugh immediately, but then you have to sit there and try to figure out why the joke was so funny? That's an amygdala hijack. And I think this is what's happening here, that a feminist and a social justice warrior hears a certain key words, and their brain is hijacked and gets very emotional and starts going into this rant about this or that. And I really think this is what's going on, that these are just emotional triggers, and that they may not even be fully aware that this is happening, that they're going through this. They may not be fully aware that they're specifically targeting, like, if they see something that's possibly racist, they think it's racist. And it's like their mind doesn't properly analyze it. They immediately have a bias. It's like wearing colored lenses, except their colored lenses affects their bias. And we all have that. We all have things that affect our biases. But for social justice warriors, they're looking for victims. I put a post on Tumblr, and it was a longer list, but the short of it is, if you're a female, person of color, or someone of the LGBT, and say I write a character that is a villain that represents one of these three, then I'm either a sexist, a racist, or a homophobe. If I make a character of these groups that is a weak character, I'm either a sexist, racist, or a homophobe. But if I make them a strong hero character, I'm properly representing all three of these. However, if I have a character that's white, male, and straight, and I make them a villain, it's, justified. It's perfectly normal. If I make them a weak character, it's perfectly normal. But if I make them a strong hero character, then it is, God, I can't think of that term, privilege. It's white privilege. It's straight privilege. It's male privilege. You hear feminists say all the time, check your privilege. And that's what social justice warriors want. They want it so that if you are straight, male, and white, you're the worst thing in this world, but they're going to tell us that we have privilege that no one else does, and that the only role we should ever face is as villain or as a weak character. And for us to have a powerful role is basically saying that, well, this is just a power fantasy you have. It's such bullshit. But I know I'm not really going too much into the mind of it, and from what I'm seeing is it's just that they're always on. And even when we're not trying to talk about, anything that's sexist or racist, or she doesn't really see me as these things, but it's just that she triggered and immediately went into the discussion, not realizing that it was me she was talking to, which tells me she didn't even fully realize that she was saying anything, or if she did, she didn't stop herself to say, wait a minute, should I really be doing this? And only felt bad when I pointed it out to her that she did something wrong. Also, for like the chicken breasts in the bra, she didn't really realize she did something wrong until I explained it to her. Probably because it was like, well, I'm a woman. It's not like I can really insult another woman, until I demonstrated to her that she did insult her. And rather than take the responsibility of saying, you know what, I really did something wrong here and I shouldn't do that again, she said, well, it's misogyny. Well, no, you didn't hate her for it. There was no intention of hate. She's a very sweet person. But then she's like, well, it's internal misogyny. It's still a scapegoat. We throw around, these social justice warriors throw this term around all the time, and then it's starting to mean nothing. I mean, women, feminists, social justice warriors, if you're listening to this, stop throwing that word around, because it's starting to lose its meaning. It's starting to become a joke. Oh no, a woman called me a misogynist, so I'm not really insulted by that. It's a bad word. It's a very bad word. So is misandry. Now, the problem with the use of the word misandry, well, the problem with misogyny, let me start with there. The problem with misogyny is that any behavior that makes a woman feel bad is considered misogynistic. Any criticism you give women is misogyny. That's how social justice warriors think, and that's what they argue. But then they'll turn around and say, well, men shouldn't hate women because they're women. I hate all men. All men should die. Why can't men understand that they're hurting us? You just said that you hate all men and that you want all men to die, but then want all men to love you? That's misandry. You're showing hate. You have a specific intention of hate towards men for being men. That's misandry. And that's why we use the term against you. We don't use it for disagreeing with us. We don't mind that you disagree with us. It's perfectly within your right. We disagree with the notion of you using a scapegoat to any responsibility. If I insult you, I insult you. It's not because I'm misogynistic. It's not because I hate you. It's because, I insulted you. I'm a jerk. I'm an asshole. But I'm not a misogynist. I love women. I want equality for women. I'm an egalitarian. That's kind of our shtick. So, this is something I see a lot, and you've got to stop using the word for every little thing. It's just so annoying, and I'm sorry I can't really think right now. My mind is just like really tired. It's like 1:30 in the morning, and spent a full day writing, so my throat's drying up. But anyways, the thing that we learn about this is that a social justice warrior tries to look at any situation, and their brain asks, is there any way we can tie this to sexism, homophobia, racism? Yes, then it is. Rather than, even if they wanted to do that, say, well, there's a possibility, let's analyze it. Okay, well, some might find this racist, but looking at what they're trying to do, it's really not. Or, you can look at something and say, is this really being mean to anyone? Everyone seems to be having a good time. No? Okay, nothing wrong with it. Yes? Okay, let's analyze it further. Yeah, there's the coughing now. So, I'm going to sign off here. And I don't know if this is just going to be one episode only. I know I'm going to be doing something on bronies in the next few days. Because of Halloween that came up, there's a really good post that I want to talk about, but I don't know if I'll be doing any more episodes like this, trying to really understand the mind of a social justice warrior. But the final point to tie all this together is that these individuals may not be bad people, but because they're trying to see all of these bad things, that is why they go out and attack all of these things. And it's probably why we have an anti-Gamergate, because they don't want to believe that these men, are having a problem that's not associated to women. So that's why they say it's misogyny, it's racism, it's homophobia. They're saying all these things, even though Gamergate has specifically said, no, we're not about that. In fact, many of the people on the Gamergate side are women, are gays and lesbians, are people of color. And what you're suggesting is insulting all of them. And they don't want to see it. It's an emotional trigger. And they have to latch onto it. Now, I'm not talking about people like Brianna Wu, Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian. These people are fucked up in their own ways. I'm talking about the average person that latches onto this and latches onto this and is like, people are angry and these people over here are saying misogyny, so it has to be misogyny. Misogyny is a trigger word, so anytime someone says misogyny, I think misogyny. And if they took a step back and really tried to analyze it and hear everyone's side, they might have a difference of opinion. I don't know if that really can do anything, but that's just what I'm seeing when I look at social justice warriors. So anyways, this is Mad Cat signing off.